we'll get into the Johnson Way project. Okay.
Vera, good evening.
We got Vera. Okay, good. Okay, I think we can get started. So my name is Dave Baldini, and I am going to bring to order this meeting of the Planning Commission. And for what are we at? July 27th. And with that, I'd like to have a roll call of the commissioners. I'll start down the list if it won't change. Brenda?
Here.
Jonathan?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
John Lafferty? John, I see you. Also, we have Joe Day, who's in between us. He was a commissioner. His term has expired, but he is in the August, will be on the August agenda. And as such, Joe his inputs relative to the commission are greatly appreciated. And with that said, I'm waiting for Mike Caranta to pop in. He had requested for a moment to speak, but I don't see him.
You didn't call Vera's name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Vera?
I'm here.
Okay, I see you now. I see you now. Have I missed anybody? Okay, then.
Anyone who's not present, raise your hand.
That said, Mr. Caranta has joined us, and Mr. Mayor, I'll give you the time you requested.
Great, thank you very much. So thanks to everybody for joining in tonight. I know you've got a full agenda, so I'll be prompt. The reason I wanted to join you is because I don't know if you saw recently that the Municipal Services Commission has created a rebate program for people who are electric vehicle owners, of which I am one, but this doesn't impact me. But it provides rebates for folks that want to put in charging equipment, and that's both for residential and or commercial businesses. And you know, here's the larger issue, I think, for the Planning Commission and I think for the city, and that is, you know, there were about 15 new electric vehicles that were introduced in 2019, over 20 new different models this year, and there's going to be another 20 next calendar year in the 2021 cycle. This is clearly the future, and it's coming within the next 2 or 3 years, where the average price, well, not the average, there will be several smaller vehicles that look like a smart car that are going to cost probably around $10,000 to $12,000. And so when you get to that kind of affordability, and the range is about 100 miles, and you consider for most commuters, if they go to work, they might travel a total of 30 to 50 miles a day. So that's a very affordable option. So I started thinking about that, and I thought about the MSC's rebate program, and I think it's quite clever. I think it's smart. But it got me thinking about the Historic Area Commission and what do you do in the downtown area with historic amenities and people who need to park a car and don't have off-street parking. Now, I know that we have a couple of neighbors that run cords from their home out across the sidewalk, which is not ideal, to their cars. You know, but left with no other option, you know, that's something to think about. So I talked to Layla Hamroon, as some of you may know. Layla is the architect for the city and on retainer, and works with the Historic Area Commission. I asked her to think more broadly about this too, because we have other neighborhoods around the city where we have high density and people don't have off-street parking. I'm looking at Brenda, and Brenda lives over in Shawtown. Now, she has, a single family home with a garage, but there are several residents of Shawtown and Dobbinsville and other parts of the community where off-street parking is just simply not an option. So I don't know what our next steps would be, but I would invite you to think about it. We have several parking lots around the city. Most people, and myself included, now I've got a garage with electric outlet. So I don't need to charge every day. I don't need to charge, but maybe once every few days. But there's in part, a discussion about the visitor experience, people that go to Battery Park, and MSC is going to probably put the conduit down, the cabling necessary for the new parking lot that's under construction. But that's only one location. There are several other parking lots around the community, and they're typically not populated by visitors or guests, but they're used by residents. I'm thinking of the one behind the post office on 5th Street. I'm thinking about over by Bull Hill, a number of others. And it could be that we need to think more broadly about this. There are different levels of chargers. There's a level 1, which is simply a wall plug, 110. A level 2, which is my car can be completely charged in about 6-7 hours with a level 2. That's if you think of your dryer or your microwave or a portable air conditioner, that's a level 2. It's a 220 volt. And then there's high-speed chargers like the ones over at Wawa off of Memorial Drive and 13. My car is charged at 80% in 30 minutes. I'm not talking about that per se, but definitely level 2 chargers, which could serve to help the public, especially in a circumstance where we don't want to necessarily invest in a house by house kind of circumstance. At least I don't think. But it might be better to have a couple of locations around the community that could provide this kind of service, especially for residents. So I don't think there's anything that you need to do, obviously, within the next month or two, but I'd ask you to maybe start thinking about it and thinking about how we would want to manage this as a community, especially a community where we have a number of residents that do not have off-street parking options. So, David, that's really all I wanted to communicate. I know you've got a full agenda, and like I said, I've tuned into the recent MSC meeting, and I've met and talked with the Historic Area Commission architect, and she's going to actually construct a short memo with some ideas, and I'll leave it up to the wisdom of this group to think more broadly about it, because that's what the Planning Commission should do. But I think that's an issue that we should be thinking about and putting on our radar, so we can have some kind of citywide strategy, since we have so many residents, multifamily housing, et cetera, where they just don't have off-street charging options, should that become progressively more of a thing. So, David, thank you. That's all I really had to say. And I'm going to duck out because elected officials aren't supposed to Zoom into these meetings. So I don't want to trouble you with my presence. So unless anybody has any, yeah, there you go. At least anybody has any other questions for me about this topic, I'm happy to answer them. All right.
Okay.
All right. Hearing none. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great night.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, back on topic. Let's go for the minutes. We have the minutes from June. Are there any comments or criticism, changes that we need to make on the June minutes? And can I get a motion to accept the June minutes?
So moved.
Second? All right. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Then let's change the agenda. And what I want to do is take the comprehensive plan activity. That should be, we have the schedule that we're going to do the completion, and that should be very quickly. And then we can move into the Johnson Way project. So that said, Debbie, I'm going to bring you up. Kim, if you can bring her presentation.
It's a large one. One page.
I can let you know where we're at while we're waiting for the schedule. So
Okay.
we just received the Delaware Bayshore Byway. If you remember the comments we went over last month, we just
Yeah.
received the Delaware Bayshore Byway. The Secretary of Transportation signed off on that in mid-June. And there's quite an extension of that because it takes it all the way down to Lewis now. So we got all that information. We have plugged that in there today. We have 2 more small sections to wrap up for factual data tomorrow, which is the climate change section and the MS4. We just got some more information on that, those areas. Everything else has been updated as we discussed last meeting. And our intent is to email the final draft for the Planning Commission tomorrow with your comment sheet. So you'll have one last time to look at that, which is those changes that we went through on that spreadsheet at the last meeting. So you'll actually see the same thing the state would see and the public would see is where we made those changes and what information we put in there. And just to kind of elaborate on your electronic vehicle rebate, remember that was a comment from the state for greenhouse gases. So that initiative is put in there with a goal as well. So it was great that we're kind of ahead of that, even though right now the mayor can't see that document until you're ready. So we are moving forward with having that draft to you tomorrow. And then if you could just zoom in on that for me for a minute, Kim. That way it's kind of legible. I'll be able to go over that with you. So what we did was we basically took the state presentation. Thank you, that's great. We took the state presentation requirements, your normal meeting schedule, and we went through this draft schedule. Can everybody see that okay with their icons?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, so we have a virtual meeting today, which is 7:27, where we're going to relay the final draft to you tomorrow, and we're going to go over this schedule. We're going to ask that you take your final look. So we took your comments into consideration last time, made those recommendations. This is just going to be changes made from the state comments, which we went over with you. So we envision very minor comments, so minor that we need to turn it back around. And then I will be formatting a final presentation. So we are getting ready for your last review and getting ready to release it to the public. So on August 11th, by the way, the meetings are in red. So we have the City Commission Council, the draft plan presentation, and the public release. So August 11th, we'll be doing the presentation on what was done this time versus last time, some highlights, some areas we needed to pay attention to, the future land use, of course. Once that gets released to the commissioners or to the council and everybody, we will then send it to Newcastle County WMAPCO as well. And just so you know, Newcastle County is part of the PLUS process anyways. We got, but we didn't get specific comments. So we'd like to send it to them directly. So the public comment period opens actually on August 12th then. That'll be posted on the town's website with a link for an email for people to submit. And due to the fact that we're into the COVID virtual meetings, this changes interaction a little bit with the public. So until further notice, right now we're requesting written comments, and they'll be using the same prescribed form that you did for your comments as well. We will then take all the written comments back and prepare the spreadsheet. I think you enjoyed the process we did last time with the PLUS comments. So we'd like to take the same exercise and have them in a spreadsheet as well with recommendations. We will review those recommendations from August 13th to October 23rd. And it seems like a long time, but we're hoping to get those periodically. And then we'd like to have a special planning commission meeting on October 26th, where we would go over that spreadsheet with you of all the comments collected and all the recommendations. And then from October 27th to November 4th, we'll be doing the state and the public recommendations update to the plan. Then we submit to state for the final review, which is sending it to the state, all the comments, the draft document. They have 20 working days. So we thought that would be a great time during the holidays. However, it delays things a little bit. So 20 working days gets us to about December 4th, tentatively. Once we get that comment letter back, if we have certification issues or, you know, they don't do a re-review, they're only looking at the comments that we made updates on. We would look for a second read and potential adoption. If that potential adoption does not happen, or we have an overwhelming amount of public hearing comments, these get pushed back just a little bit. So we would vote contingent upon the governor's certification, and the end of December or the beginning of January would be the final deliverables, and then we'd notify the state and county of the acceptance. So if you look at and go back to the blue area is the area where we really want assistance to get the written comments. So we have an open period from 8/12 to 10/13. We're allowing 60 days before the holidays. So this extension actually worked out pretty good, but we're offering a 2-month window there before we get into that November, December, so we can hash through and go through all the comments. The comments are going to be categorized and put at the back of your document as an appendix as well. So all comments will be in writing, and all comments will be considered in the spreadsheet and addressed if there's a recommendation. And just be prepared, as in with the surveys, we'll get comments to say specific policies need to be made. And at that time, they'll be considered with your implementation tasks. So we're getting very close. You'll see it one more final time, and then we will be able to release it to the public, WMAPCO and the county. And as you saw, we had minimal comments from the state. I thought they were great comments, but we had good congratulations on the document itself. So with that, that's how we're moving along. It's actually coming, we actually almost have an end date here for those that have been hanging in for a couple of years. Are there any questions or concerns? The one part I just want to reiterate is, depending on the amount of comments, that could be shifted down a little bit. Those are unknown at this time. With virtual meetings, it's hard to tell how many you're going to get. Any questions or concerns?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
For August 11th, that's the draft presentation and public comment release. Is that right?
Correct.
And does that mean public comment release that the public will then be notified that, you know, the comprehensive plan is ready for their review and comment? And will it be like an online type of thing, or?
Yes, so there, we will be doing, in our presentation, we'll be doing the entire outreach promotion for the written comments, how people can get to the document, how people can get to certain sections of the document if we break it down, and what their process will be to submit written comments.
So it will all be online. There's nothing in person.
Well, we cannot meet in person until the COVID is lifted.
Right.
So yeah, so, and that's what a lot of municipalities are having to do. We've been working with state planning because we don't have a mechanism to have the public at a large amount of quantity of people without knowing who would show up. So this way we know that everybody can be received. We can say, you know, if there's a population that does not have emails, I can take phone calls. I don't want to put that pressure on the staff, but we prefer to put it in writing, because if somebody calls me, I'm just going to type it up and write it for them. So that way they're all cataloged and they're all voiced. And you'll have the snapshot like you did with the state. It's a little different outreach right now with the virtual meetings. Changes that opportunity. If we're back up and running again in October when we have the public hearing, we could get additional verbal that meeting. Just unknown, and we have to move forward in the process since we're on our second extension.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Any other questions? Are you all comfortable with it? Then I think we're good to go, Debbie.
Okay, well, I will go ahead and email that to the planning commissioners tomorrow with the worksheet to fill out, and see if you have any final comments on that, and then we'll get ready for our presentation. And we would invite, this will be a joint meeting on August 11th. So it'll be planning commission and council.
Yeah,
So we'll work with Kim and her staff on how to maneuver that.
right. It'll be at the city council meeting.
Correct.
All right then.
Thank you, great input. Appreciate it, everybody.
All right,
Thank you.
take care.
David, am I excused, or did you want me to?
Yep. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
Good
You too.
night.
All right, then the next item on our agenda is the Johnson Way Stormwater Pond Relocation Parking Lot Expansion, 1401 and 1501 Johnson Way. Parcels 210-1300106 and 210-1300030. Land development and landscape plan approvals and recommendations for the Board of Adjustment variances to landscaping requirements or alternatives. And with that said, Do we have, who is presenting for Johnson Way? Is that you, Sean? You're on mute. Where are we at? Where'd you go?
Yes. Yeah, hold on one second. Here we go. Sorry about that,
That's okay.
Chairman. Yes, Sean Tucker for the applicant, Chairman.
So tell us, Sean, what we have here. What we've been getting is a lot of documents, and the stuff was coming in until moments ago.
Yes, Chairman. I appreciate your patience and that of the commissions this evening. Thank you very much for holding tonight's hearing and considering my client's application. Here with me tonight is Paul and Mike McConnell, owner, and Mark Ziegler is our civil engineer. Gary Bertram is our landscape architect. I was retained a couple of months ago at the beginning of summer to assist with the application. And while I think the application itself is pretty straightforward in terms of the new parking lot and the standards in your code for that, there is history with this property that I think is very important. There was work done at this site some time ago under older code provisions, and there has been a relocation of the pond already, which has raised some concerns from our neighbors that we've become aware of, that we're also trying to address as part of this application, which makes it a little bit more complicated, certainly. So what I'd like to do is start with what we see as more the by right plan that is set forth in your code in terms of the requirements and the legal standards, and then explain this alternative plan and how that intersects with the by right plan. As you probably know, this is a project for Amazon. They ramp up, of course, in the fall for the holiday season, and this parking lot is needed to supply additional spaces for them and their delivery needs. We have postponed this, as you probably have noticed on your agenda, to try to get our head around some of these other issues that our neighbors have raised that we've been trying to address. In fact, I think we had a very productive meeting this morning with some of our neighbors. I'm happy to report. So having said that, I'd like to start with your blessing, Chairman, with the by right application. And we have prepared a PowerPoint to help with that and put these different parcels in perspective for all of you this evening.
Let me preface that by saying, assume we know nothing.
Yes.
All right, because
And
indeed.
I took that approach with my PowerPoint.
All right, then let's start.
Very good. I think you have that on your end
And we'll bring it up
to
in a
start
minute.
to run for us. I'm not sure who. Okay, yes, very good. And I think if you click the slideshow in the bottom right-hand corner there, it should start. That little icon next to 117% to the left. It's down here in the right-hand corner.
Or the F5 key usually works also.
There we go. Thank you very much. So, Chairman, what we wanted to do first was give you an overview of really this area of the industrial park. And what I've done is I've broken it up into three sections. Lot A to the left, Lot B in the center, and Lot C. And those are labels I put on the PowerPoint slide to break up the property into segments. We are here tonight for our new parking area and landscaping only for Lot A. The application in front of you tonight is only for Lot A. But again, because of the history, I felt it important to be completely transparent to give you history on Lot B and C. To orient you, Washington Park is at the top of the screen, and you're seeing parcel lines to the right behind Lot C that are Washington Park parcel lines. Lot A backs up to the ball field, and Lot C represents an existing pond that you see today, and then a pond that's currently under construction to the right on Part C that's actually under construction today, previously approved, that is not part of our application today. Lot B in the center is a parking lot that does exist. It was previously approved. It is not part of our application today. Again, only Lot A is part of our application today. And I'll walk you through the legal standards that we're required by code to satisfy to present this application and confirm code compliance with all of you this evening. And if you could give the screen one click, please, that'll advance the slide. Thank you. This. So again, just to highlight the point visually, Lot A is the only lot that is under consideration for approval this evening. Next slide, please. Okay. And what I wanted to do, just again to give context here, give you an idea of zoning and size. Lot A, 2.05 acres. That's the application today. Lot B in the center is about 4.5, and Lot C is about 8.5. One more click, please. And to give you an idea of zoning, the Lot A application, again, tonight's application, that property is zoned industrial, consistent with the business park or industrial park. Lot B is actually zoned open space, and Lot C is zoned open space. We are here only on Lot A, which is zoned today industrial. Next slide, please. And another click, please. Lot A, this application proposes 242 new parking spaces. That layout was designed by McBride and Ziegler, and Gary Burcham, our landscape architect, prepared the landscaping that you see on Lot A this evening. Next slide, please. And next click. Okay. This plan represents approximately the existing conditions. The conditions have been changing out there over the past few weeks with the construction going on, but what you're seeing is existing conditions today, except Lot A is now proposed. Next slide, please. And I wanted to give you a perspective, if you were standing on Lot A, what you would be seeing if you look towards the rear of it or to the east. And again, the ball field is behind Lot A, but I just wanted to give you some visual perspectives throughout the parcel lines. Next slide, please. So if you were standing at that location, this is what you would see looking to the rear of Lot A today. The ball field is just over that brush. Next slide, please. And next click. So this is position number 2, where I had somebody stand with the camera and take a picture behind Lot B, just to put the whole area in perspective. And then we'll have a picture of that visual. This was about 3 weeks ago. This was taken. Next slide, or next click. And so if you're standing on the parking lot and you were looking east, that's what you would see. And that's the existing parking lot today. Next click, please. This is position number 3 as you go down the property towards the south, but looking east. And next picture, please. Okay, and that's right on the property line. You can see the brush. It's still there between the property line, between my client's property line and the residential that's just behind that shrubbery. Next slide, please. And this is the fourth position where a picture was taken about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. For some reason, it looks like the internet's running a little bit slow here. Okay, and that's again a picture standing on the property line or just off the property line, looking to the east into Washington Park.
So Sean, those are homes behind the trees, right? Like actual.
That is correct. That is
Okay.
correct, and I believe that's a fence that you're seeing part of there. That white fence, I believe.
Now, you said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sean, but these pictures were taken 3 weeks ago?
3 to 4 weeks ago, I would estimate.
Because I did drive by recently, and it looks like there's been a lot more excavation done between the your client's current parking lots and the homes that are right behind there. So there's been some more clearing out, isn't that right?
Yeah, but this is most of it already done. I was out there this morning at 9 o'clock meeting with neighbors, and the shrubbery along the property line, which is very narrow, but that shrubbery, I believe, is mostly still there. Where this, remember, this is where the pond is. Remember, this is where the pond is.
Right. The previous pictures from view 1, 2, and 3 look different.
Okay. Yeah, I think where the vehicles are moving, there's a gap between the two there.
So
I
I
was
was
out
there
there when the
today, and it
Yeah, I
looked like it was just piles of dirt backed up to houses. Was I looking in the
yeah, this is further down where the pond is. I know I was out there today too, and this site's in motion. So this PowerPoint's taken a couple weeks to put together. But if we go to the next slide, I can show you where you were standing or where you were looking when you saw those piles. If somebody could click, please. One more click on the slide. I don't know if it's frozen. Okay, there we go. So those piles, to answer your question, we were standing at 13th Street. And 13th Street, if you look at Lot B, to the right side, all the way in the back, that's West 13th Street. So if you're standing on West 13th Street, those piles of dirt, no, go back. Please. There. Thank you very much. Those piles of dirt would be right sort of where B is, top right, sort of towards the center of your screen. That's where those piles are being built up. Oh, we lost it again. There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Those piles would be there. The pictures I was just showing you are all the way down Lot C, looking almost on the property line into the residential. So if we back up a little bit more, I can show you, I may have moved a little bit too quickly, and I apologize if I did. I can show you more of the images from B that were taken about 3 to 4 weeks ago. Maybe a little bit further. Okay, how about slide 5, I think would help folks. There we go, that one there.
Again, when I drove there on Friday, just this past Friday, And it's definitely had more progress. There's really no shrubbery between your parking lot B and the home directly behind it. And I think that's let's see.
Right. So I know where you're standing, and there's a little bit of some optics going on here. There is a grade separation of about 5 to 7 feet when you go over the edge of that parking lot. And
Right.
it drops down dramatically.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you see in this picture, that tree is like, it's 7 or 8 feet up where you're seeing that shot. You are right that almost all of the vegetation on this slide between the property lines has been removed, and that is so that the pipe that is going to carry the water that is so critical to resolve a drainage problem historic in Washington Park, which is part of the solution or the more global solution to what's going on out here. You can't see that in this picture, but that's where the trucks drive back and forth just over that sort of mini cliff. That is going to be re-landscaped. That is not part of tonight's application, but I'm going to show you what we're doing there because I knew this would come up, and I wanted to give you a perspective of what we're going to put back there after the construction's completed. But the vegetation, there's still vegetation beyond, by the pond, between the community, and we're also going to show you what we're going to provide back there. I didn't want this application to become about Lot C because that's not the application, but at the same time, I wanted to share with everybody what we're going to do or want to do down that end of the property over time that is going to require some additional approvals. So could we hop to slide 8 if that's okay with everybody? Okay. And that's the construction fence. Now this is along the pond now. We're all the way down at C, and that's the property line, give or take, where that construction fence is. We have not disturbed the brush that you see on the other side of that. That's off our property. And it's hard to see that from the parking lot. You literally have to walk down a ways to get to that part, but that's all the way down the southern end of the property. Next slide, please. Okay. So again, for the time being, and I'll get to the other areas I know folks have questions about. What you see circled is Lot A. This is on the northeast side of the property, and this is the primary subject of the application. And here's the legal standard that our engineer and our landscape architect followed in putting this plan together for this new proposed parking area. So we certainly focused on section 230-28G. Our landscape architect and engineer are going to talk about section 1B, or big I, little b, which was the focus point, and number 2 in that section. We also certainly took into account the application requirements found in 230-46, as well as the lighting requirements or the anti-glare requirements that are discussed under the performance standards at 230-36. But if I may, let me start with the primary, what I think is the primary legal standard here, which is really driving us to you today or tonight to talk about the landscaping and the parking requirements in the code. This applies to new parking areas that are not grandfathered in, that are for residential and non-residential. And under I, you will see it says the perimeter of all parking areas that are visible from a public street, shall be visually screened. Johnson Way, which you'll see down at the bottom right there on the exhibit, that is a public right-of-way inside the industrial park. So it's Johnson's Way that's triggering section 1 of this code for us to come to you and do this landscaping on the new proposed area. And with that, let me just click through one slide more, and then I'll ask Mark to sort of give you an overview, Mark Ziegler, of the parking layout and the landscaping. Actually, we can use this one. So this will work good. This is the code required landscaping, Exhibit B. And here we're focused on Lot A, which is on the far left of your screen. And I'm going to ask Mark Ziegler for a moment, if I may, to talk about the parking layout here and how many parking spots there are. And also I'm going to ask Gary Bertram to talk about the landscaping and how he carefully took a look at the code provisions that I just showed you on slide 9 and how he went about designing this parking area consistent with the code. With that, Mark, could you walk folks briefly through the landscaping or the number of parking spaces and how you lay those parking spaces out?
Hello, my name is Mark Ziegler, and I'm with McBride and Ziegler. So basically, as Sean said, we parking lot, the parcel in question has an area of 2 acres. And so the layout you see right there has approximately 13 islands, and there are 226 stalls. One of the big concerns when we did the parking lot design also was, and I think Jeff can attest to this, there was a lot of concern about the drainage along Johnson Way and also the drainage that was going from the existing basin into Washington Park. Basically, 17 acres drains into that storm management facility. And as part of this plan, not only was a parking lot proposed, but we rerouted 17 acres away from Washington Park into the proposed basin. So essentially, there's a swale that is parallel with 14th Street and then ties into a culvert that drains through Washington Park. So I know the McConnells have spent quite a bit of money on rerouting the drainage to get to improve the drainage in Washington Park. But there's 226 stalls, and this plan has 13 proposed landscape islands.
And is that the parking that would be required normally per the code?
Yes, yes.
And Mr. Bertram, could you jump in and talk about your landscaping design briefly and walk the commissioners through that?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gary Bertram. I'm the landscape architect project from Bertram Associates. If you look at the ellipse down at the bottom, adjacent to Johnson Way, what's being highlighted there is the screening that's required from the public road, which is a 26-inch high ornamental fence and evergreen hedge. And so since we have the public right-of-way there, we have put in the required planting for that. Now, the trees that you see are 4-inch caliper canopy trees as required by the code that are installed at the rate of 1 tree per every 5 parking spaces. And with 226 parking spaces on this by right plan, we're required to have 46 4-inch high, 4-inch caliper canopy trees. And those, as you can see, have been distributed throughout the parking lot and on the perimeter and near the entrance and as we could install them. The other compliance issue was that the parking lot be at least 10% landscaped.
And with that, if I may interrupt for just a moment, could you click on the next slide, please? This will help illustrate the second prong of the legal standard. Okay, okay, that'll work. So now you see the area blown up, and Gary's going to talk more about the rest of what's inside the new parking lot.
Right, and as I said, we're providing 1 tree per every 5 parking spaces, which ends up totaling 46 shade trees. And the area that's required is also that it be at least 10% landscaped area. And what we have with this by right plan is a total of 17.1%, if memory serves, of that is landscape area. Now, the only thing we're going beyond the requirements for the planting of Lot A is on Lot B, up at the top, we are simply replacing plants that have been taken out as a result of the construction that's going in. So the plans that were there are being replaced for screening purposes once all the construction has been done.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. And to put a finer point on that, what Gary was referring to is lot B in the center of your screen. That green landscaping you see back there is intended to replace what has been removed as part of the construction activity. That is more of a footnote to let folks know that we're replacing what had to be removed so that those vehicles, those construction vehicles, could travel through that narrow area and replace or install the piping that is so critical so that the water that historically had gone through Washington Park would now cut through between our property line and an easement and get installed actually in the easement to get to the pond ultimately that is currently under construction on lot C to the south. But what you see in the circle in blue is what Gary designed pursuant to the code sections that we cited above. And I think the next slide will help bring that all back together in a color version, please. Slide 12. Okay. So again, and what's happening this, and I apologize for the confusion. If you go into slideshow, it actually shows the code sections and how each thing that Gary has proposed meets the code sections. We don't necessarily have to do it that way. We can just click on the slides. But what I try to do in the presentation is show you, here's what the code said is required along the frontage. Gary explained what was installed there. Here's what the code says about the minimum 10% coverage. We're at 17%. We've checked that box. Now there's different permutations of different things you can do to meet the code. What you see in front of you this evening is what Gary has proposed to do consistent with the code to obtain approval for Lot A. Next slide, please. Okay, so let me pause here before I dive into the alternative landscaping plan. Because of the parking need for the holiday season coming, it is really critical for us to ask all of you this evening to carefully consider, as I know you always do, but to consider our Lot A application as a standalone application, which we're seeking approval from you this evening if possible. We believe that meets code. Gary Bertram has explained how he's designed that per code, and there's certain different permutations you can use to get to code, but the one he has chosen he believes meets code, and I'm sure that's been reviewed by your outside engineer and Jeff Bergstrom to comment on this evening. However, we wanted to be completely transparent and we didn't want there to be any confusion about this. We have reached out to our neighbors to the rear. I did in writing about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, and we were ultimately able to get together actually this morning. COVID has certainly presented some challenges for us to get together. We got together outside. We've also had some emails back and forth over the past couple of weeks. And we wanted to also, if possible, address some concerns we've heard this summer about the by right work that's already been done for the pond itself, because the pond itself did not require a public hearing. And what we heard, or what my client had heard over the past few months, is that folks were upset, and understandably so, there was a lot of vegetation on the land to the south that had been removed. We get that, we understand that. I've been out there and I've looked at that, and we wanted to try to address that buffering. Now, there wasn't anything removed that wasn't allowed to be removed. You know, this is private property. It was allowed to be removed. Those ponds were approved. There were permits. All that was done appropriately looking back at it. But at the same time, we know people were upset about it. We'd heard about it and wanted to try to address that issue while we were coming through with this application. So what we've done is prepare what I've called an alternative landscaping plan. An alternative landscaping plan where we take more of a minimalist approach on Lot A. So you see on this slide, we have reduced the number of plantings on Lot A. And we have added many more plantings across B. Many of B we were going to do anyway, but really where you really see the benefit is as you slide into Lot C. And now you see the double row of evergreens that are being proposed, as well as these offset evergreens that come down in front of the pond where there is no additional landscaping required by the code. So what we're doing is again, I think the picture's worth 1,000 words here, is we're taking some of that hardy landscaping that I would suggest offered limited value, if any, to the neighbors behind us by right plan, and spreading that out and adding more of it to the south. And I can have Gary certainly break down those numbers and how we've done that and talk about survivability and caliper and different things like that. As recently as this morning, as I mentioned, we were first really able to meet with our neighbors in the field and talk about putting in even maybe a handful of more plantings here and there to address specific lot owner concerns, which were deviating from the code by relocating some of the plantings now on other lots and reducing other things on the by right plan. We would need variances from the Board of Adjustment. So that's the part of this I know that's a little bit confusing perhaps, and a little bit, that makes this a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. But we didn't want to come in front of you with only the by right plan, ignore this history with Lot B and C, and we wanted our neighbors to understand that we're genuine about wanting to ultimately do this alternative plan. But to meet our timeline, managing around COVID and trying to manage around the busy season for Amazon's needs, we needed to do this in a certain order, and we needed to come to you first to stay on timeline, ask you to approve our by right plan, but understand that we will be seeking variances because our neighbors, quite frankly, will benefit from those variances. And I think the area overall will look better with those variances, with this landscaping spread out. And also, of course, managing budgets to some extent here, because certainly this effort is not without significant expense, including this significant redesign of stormwater management to help resolve an existing problem in the community behind us. So just to sum up, and we're happy to answer all your questions certainly this evening that we can. We are seeking your approval on the application to do the new parking lot on A in the by right, what I'm calling by right configuration, because we're checking off the code standards, but also to disclose to you that we do plan to go to the Board of Adjustment in August to build the alternative plan if approved by the Board of Adjustment. If the Board of Adjustment doesn't approve the alternative landscape plan, we have to fall back on our by right plan. And that doesn't mean we won't keep working with our neighbors to talk about things we could do in the future with them, but we have to have a plan that we know we can build going into the end of August, or we are going to miss an important window with Amazon and their parking needs this fall. So Chairman, I tried my best to give you the bigger picture that I know you wanted, so you could get your head around this, because there's a lot going on here. And maybe I gave too much, maybe I didn't give enough, but we'll sit here and do our best to walk folks through this and clarify any questions you may have, or what we're trying to do here in terms of the more global picture. We have a second slideshow ready to talk about, if desired, to talk about exactly how we're redirecting the water, showing those pictures, showing the volumes, showing how we're significantly reducing the water that's currently going through Washington Park today, making the drainage situation much better, much safer and solving historic drainage problems that the city's had in the area that we're also cleaning up with this project. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Let me say this, having a lot of this information well before tonight would have been very beneficial, as well as what you intend to do with all of that water that you're dumping out of your place into Washington Park, because I sense that you were dumping it from the pipe that I saw, which is what, 5 feet in diameter? You're dumping it into Washington Park, which is a much smaller volume. It's going to be able to handle a much smaller volume of water.
Actually, Chairman, just the opposite. We're taking water that historically gone there and we're avoiding running it through Washington Park. And we have a slide that can demonstrate that if you'd like.
Demonstrates my
That's a
point.
great question. Yep. That's a great question. That's why.
Because from where we sit, I mean, yes, you wanted to do some small aspect of a very large project, but we can't do the small project without the history and or the implications and the unintended consequences of the larger project.
Chairman, it's certainly a fair point, and that's why we wanted to get some more exhibits together for this evening. And with that, I do think it would be helpful to show there's like 4 other slides in PowerPoint number 2 that I think would help you visualize how this water is changing and the great benefit this larger project does, which the city's involved with. And so if I may, okay, thank you. So that's slideshow 2 that should be in the information received from my office to the clerk.
Can I ask a question while you're getting that slideshow ready?
Sure, absolutely.
So parking lot A, which already exists, but that's up for the discussion primarily tonight. How long ago was that a runoff water basin? When did that get paved over?
Well, I don't think it's been paved over. It's not been paved over yet. It was
Okay,
relocated.
but there's cars in it now. I mean, there's parking there.
No, that's, you're referring to parking lot B. The cars are in parking lot B currently.
B, okay.
A
Yes.
was the basin, and they are filling that with the dirt that's on C,
And rerouting that now to,
moving it from C to A to fill in the basin.
when did the parking lot B then get paved over?
Let me ask, do we know when that happened?
I think that was approximately 2 years ago.
Okay. I'm just trying to see how old the images that I have are of that area. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Well, it looks like we got slideshow 2 coming up. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
We can almost hear you.
Okay, is this the one you're talking about?
Yes. There should be about 4 slides that go with this that are standalone slides.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to let Mark Ziegler jump in here. And Mark, these are in the order that you sent them to me. So
But they're not the slides.
okay, so why don't we go to the next slide?
These are not the slides. This is the packet information.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was the first slide. I'm sorry. So the slide should be in the link, the second link that Jessica sent you this morning that came along with the first PowerPoint. Sorry about that.
That's right.
While we're waiting for this, could I get you to talk me through, I've now got at least 4 different landscape plans. No, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, there are 2 different development plans and there are 4 landscape plans. Can you help me understand which of those I should be looking at?
The landscape plans would be dated yesterday, 7/26.
July 26th. Okay. And I'm getting used to a new pair of glasses. I'm having a hard time distinguishing them just from, I mean, I can see they've got different landscaping on them, but you can help me understand which is which?
Sure. And with that, let me say what has happened over the past couple of weeks. And again, this is an effort to make the alternative plan better. It's not been as much about the application for A as it has been about the alternative plan. But one of the things we found out was the parcel line transfers were wrong. One of the neighbors actually pointed that out, that some of the parcel lines on the initial plans were a little bit off. So we had our engineer correct them, and they had to be corrected on the landscaping plan. So that's some of what's happened. There was also a reforestation area that we were proposing that we altered. And then I'll let Gary give you the specifics. But that's generally what happened in the transition between the different plans. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, the landscape plans shifted a bit of where we're doing the planting, where we're doing the planting of the evergreens, and we eliminated the idea of doing the reforestation on the earlier plan, which was a few weeks back, because we needed to make sure that in the future we would have access all around the existing pond for any possible future maintenance that might need to happen, because as you know, these retention ponds, they do require maintenance over the years. And where we had thought we could do some reforestation, we were like thinking that, well, that would be quite disturbed by any work that might need to happen. So instead of doing that, we shifted to an additional row of evergreens paralleling that is going in, and made that denser.
So that's the change in the landscaping
Yeah.
plan. There's subtle changes, but we wanted you to have the latest and greatest based on our email conversations with some of our neighbors, and then some of the practical adjustments we made. Most of what we've been doing, which has delayed you getting things, and we apologize for that, is modifications to the alternative plan that we would anticipate taking to the Board of Adjustment. We've not really made any significant changes to the by right. The other thing that I should mention while we're waiting is, in terms of lighting, there was a landscaping plan submitted. It works for both, I'm sorry, a lighting plan submitted. It works both for the alternative plan and the by right plan, where we're shielding light from migrating across the property line pursuant to the anti-glare provisions that are also in your code. So there is a design for lighting fixtures with reflectors to ensure that future lighting will stay on the property and not migrate off. We're also going to retrofit them to the existing parking lot, because we heard from the neighbors they were getting light migration there. So we've assured them that we're going to address that there, even though that is a grandfathered parking lot. We would do that as part of the alternative plan to clean that issue up as well.
Okay, so of these 2 plans dated yesterday, the one with that shows fewer trees on it, that's the by right plan?
The one with fewer trees is the alternative plan. The one that has more trees is the by right plan.
Oh, the one with more
One
trees
that
is the
has
by right.
dense
On lot A, yes.
on lot A, the one that has the dense planting on lot A, that is the by right plan. And the one that has planting on lots B and C to a great extent That is the alternative that we are looking
Okay,
for.
all right. And you said there are different numbers of parking spaces on the two plans?
That is correct. That is correct. So, Mark, give the breakout. I believe there are 16 more spots available on the alternative plan by moving or shifting a lot of landscaping and more landscaping in total numbers to the south. The alternative plan, I think, generates about 16 more parking spots for Amazon's use on Lot A. Is that correct, Mark?
That's exactly correct. If
Okay,
you look at the alternative plan, the landscaping is taken and put up against the Washington Park area, and the trade-off is there's less islands, landscape islands in the parking lot. That parking lot backs up to the ball field and the industrial properties. So that landscaping in the parking lot really wouldn't be visible to anybody from Washington Park, which is why there's an alternative plan.
And one of the other things about the alternative plan that I think is very important is that we are, we're going to, remember, if you will, along Johnson Way, I mentioned that part of the ordinance was to provide an evergreen hedge and a 26-inch high ornamental metal fence. Under the alternative plan, what we're proposing is to eliminate that 26-inch high ornamental metal fence as part of our request for the variance. Because frankly, within the industrial park, there's no other area that has a 26-inch high ornamental metal fence. And what we're going to do is take and provide fencing to the top of the existing parking lot on Lot B. And as you can see, it says proposed fence, 265 lineal feet, provides 6-foot-high, 100% opaque wood or vinyl fencing as selected by owner. Now, the reason that we're placing that there is to provide screening and a reduction in noise for the immediate neighbors. Part of what we found out as we've gone through this whole process was that there was some noise that has been bothersome to the neighbors, and the headlights have been bothersome to the neighbors. So rather than taking and investing a lot of money in a ornamental fence down along Johnson Way and sort of have this island of ornamental metal fence in the middle of where it doesn't exist anywhere else in the industrial zone, and utilizing a more functional fence to the top side of that parking lot, that is going to go a long way to alleviating a number of the problems that the neighbors currently have.
So to sum up on that front, we're adding a fence 6 feet. We talked today about wood or vinyl. Some folks would like vinyl. We're going to go with what the majority of folks want there based on our conversation this morning on the alternative plan. We're going to address the lighting issue from the existing light fixtures on Lot B by putting in reflectors and retrofitting those. And lastly, putting in a significant amount of landscaping onto Lot C to address buffering, ideal buffering for them that is not required by code.
And one last thing, a reduction in the size of these shade trees. Instead of being 4-inch caliper, which are immense, and in my experience, inevitably fail, because they've just lose such a large part of their root system when they're transplanted. And if they are not really cared for, and I mean very much cared for by a homeowner that's got it next to their deck and is ready to take care of that thing the minute they see it start to fail in any way, then you're going to have a lot of dead trees out there that just would need to be replaced. And instead of putting in 4-inch caliper trees, we're looking to put in 1.5 to 2-inch caliper trees, which in my experience is that over a period of 5 years, you can't tell the difference between a 4-inch and a 1.5 to 2-inch, because that 4-inch tree not only has a propensity to fail, but it also just sits there for a year or two and doesn't really grow because you chopped off a significant portion of its root system, and it's trying to establish that root system before it does anything else. And so if you put in smaller trees that lose a smaller portion of their root system, then they recover much quicker and start to grow much quicker.
Thank you. David, may I ask one more question? I know I'm trying everybody's patience. I have last question, really. So the screening, the 6-foot fence on the existing parking lot, the plantings along the existing parking lot, and the stormwater pond, you need a variance in order to provide those?
No, what we need a variance for is to take and shift the resources that we're proposing for planting and screening from putting it on lot A to putting it on lot A, B, and C.
Okay, so you save money on the new parking lot, and that lets you provide some amenities for the neighbors on the others.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's true. And the money's part of it, certainly, but also the practicality of it. When you looked at how much landscaping was going to be required on the proposed new parking lot and the ornamental fencing, and you consider the nature of that district today, and it sounds like a lot of you have been back in that area, it really was going to be of little value, but of significant expense. And so we saw an opportunity to redistribute those costs in a way that would much better benefit the residential behind us, and address the community concerns at the same time. So we saw it as an opportunity to do a better project overall, and also spread the cost out over the entire property for those who we thought benefit from the buffering the most. And that's where you get the alternative from. We could do A by right. It's doable. We need that at a minimum so that we can deliver to Amazon on time. But we're obviously spending a lot of time and effort to come up with the alternative because, again, we think it's better overall. What you think is better overall certainly matters a great deal to us as well. But we just can't jump back and forth between the two and keep the important timeline we have for the tenant. We've got to seek approval on the by right and then move forward with the Board of Adjustment and hopefully with the community holding hands with us. If ultimately the community does not want the alternative, certainly we're not going to pursue that. But from our discussions with them today, and I suspect you'll hear from some of them, we have the sense that they like the alternative. They're learning more about it. We're going to continue to talk to them between now and the Board of Adjustment hearing. But obviously without their support, there's no reason for.
I have a question. Oh, Chris, and maybe this is for you. What is the reason that parking lot B did not need an approved landscape plan and lot C did not need any kind of a landscape plan? Is it because of Johnson Way? What?
I can't
B
speak
didn't need it.
to lot B. I don't know. Jeff?
Without getting into a long explanation, there's exactly as much impervious surface pavement on lot B as there was before we did the major demolition. It took over a decade to demolish the water tower, the existing electrical substation, and finally the foundations, rather substantial foundations for Hoover International that were on lot B. Once those were down, it was a matter of right for that guy for the owner to replace to put a parking lot in where it was already paved. And that's the short answer to what happened here.
How about for Lot C?
And I,
Lot C, that's a stormwater management plan. It's by right permitted in open space and recreation area. It was permitted in 2 phases. The first phase was when 1500 Johnson Way was built. And that stormwater plan, that stormwater stopped just a mess from happening on that site, and we took it into the city and treat the stormwater there. But what I'm hoping that you'll see with the presentation from Mr. Ziegler is the amount of stormwater, the 17 acres of water that was directed from the inception of this industrial park into Washington Park, and has now been removed from Washington Park almost entirely, back down to a couple percent of any water from that whole industrial park. It now goes out to Army Creek without going through Washington Park. In fact, some of the water that was kind of coming from Washington Park is now goes directly to this new stormwater facility, and goes out safely underneath the tracks and out to Army Creek.
That all sounds good.
this is site.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just also wanted to point out, and looking at this sort of backwards, as I was retained to make this application in June in front of all of you, but one of the things I also noticed in the code was the first part of the landscaping requirements in that section are triggered when the parking is visible from the right-of-way. And if you look carefully, and I just looked at this when I was putting the application together, the Johnson Way right-of-way ends before the end of Lot A and does not extend over to Lot B. So there's also, I think, a code reason, probably, I'm looking back in time, but that also would have played in here where Lot B is not on the right-of-way.
Okay.
It's on a private road. That helps.
So I have a few questions, if you
Mr.
don't mind,
Bergstrom, you
Chairman.
should have.
I can't hear you, Sean.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to let Jeff, I'm sorry, Jeff, there should be a second email to you from Jessica that has that PowerPoint.
You sent it to
Prepare
me.
the
I
first
sent
one earlier.
it to Kim, so she should have it now.
Okay, just now? Okay, very
Just-
good. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. You're muted, Dave.
Another question?
Dave, you're muted.
That might be a good thing. Did I hear it just now?
There we go. That's good. Yeah, we're just hearing you now.
I sent a message that we weren't getting things in a timely fashion. This does not qualify as a timely fashion.
Well, in fairness, it was sent earlier today. It just, for whatever reason, the link did not come up at the first.
Some of us work during the day.
Again,
Timely still.
I understand. We're trying our best with the neighbors who have concerns. That's where this alternative stuff is coming from. This is not intentionally at the last minute. It has been a back and forth effort for the past month to try to come up with an alternative to address these concerns. So we apologize for that. I've been working my best since I've gotten involved on the alternative plan and the reach out to the community. And I apologize for the inconvenience it's causing. But earlier today, the emails did come through that had the PowerPoints. For whatever reason, the second one, I guess, wasn't received, but was just resent.
Okay.
Mr. Ziegler can walk you through the water analysis while we're waiting for that to come up, if that's okay, Chairman. But Mr. Bergstrom can also confirm it all, that it's a significant adjustment for the benefit of the community, cost over $1 million to do. So there is, some significant benefit to the city that resulted along with this adjusted parking lot. Let me let Mark walk you through it verbally while we get those plans up.
Mr. Chairman, may I chime in before we move forward with the technical?
Yes.
Chris Rogers here. I just wanted to pause and make sure that the Planning Commission is confident with what their role is right here. And I would just want to take a moment to reiterate what's in front of you. So the applicant is asking for site plan approval of the by right plan. And that's squarely under the purview of the Planning Commission. That's your decision. And Jonathan, it's a site plan and the landscape plan with the 46 or some trees in the parking lot A. There's also a lighting plan. The development plan and the lighting plan are on the table for your approval tonight as a by right issue, as a by right application. We've looked at them and they do comport with the regulations that Mr. Tucker talked about. The development plan and the lighting plan in front of you, unfortunately, is based on the land development associated with the variance plan. So if you were to approve the by right landscape plan, the site plan would have to be amended to reflect that. So we keep talking about the alternative, the alternative plan. So the other thing that's in front of you tonight is that alternative plan, and they've told you that after tonight's meeting, the applicant is going to seek a variance of the landscaping requirements from the Board of Adjustment. So typically the Planning Commission by code is not required to weigh in on variance applications to the Board of Adjustment. Typically you don't see them, but because the alternative plan, the variance plan is so tied together with the by right plan, we're discussing them at the same time. But I just wanted to make it clear that you have sort of two roles tonight. One is to approve or disapprove the by right plan with the landscaping, all of the landscaping on lot A and a little bit on lot B. You consider that in isolation, and then feel free to opine on the alternative plan, because the Board of Adjustment, would want your, opinion on the merits of the alternative plan. Is that
Thank you.
clear to everybody?
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
All right, John?
Thank you, Chairman. We were able, and thank you, Jeff, for helping with that technical difficulty. We were able to get these drawings up for you that show a lot of work that Mark Ziegler's put together over the past couple of weeks, sort of breaking out how the drainage originally was traveling through Washington Park, and I'll let him explain that. And then you're going to see a slide next that shows how we've redirected it away from Washington Park. So we were able globally here to do several things, positive for Washington Park, along with this new landscaping design. But let's focus on drainage. Mark, can you walk folks through what this exhibit shows and then the next few that follow?
Sure. So the shaded area in yellow, you'll see at the top of the page, there it says existing drainage area draining to Washington Park is 17.3 acres. That area is going into the existing basin next to the U.S. Post Office. And then you'll see from the existing basin, you'll see arrows. It goes along 14th Street, and then there's a sharp right turn, essentially going south, and it goes through Washington Park. Frankly speaking, an undersized culvert in Washington Park underneath the railroad to reroute that water. So basically, you're going to see we went from 17.3 acres that was draining through Washington Park. Now the drainage area is 0.3 acres. So we've essentially, for the most part, eliminated the drainage from Center Point Business Center that was going through Washington Park is now going into the proposed basin, or the basin that exists, the newly constructed basin. That runoff is being discharged in a different location underneath the railroad, and it goes into a tributary of Army Creek. And all that work, all that rerouting of the drainage was approximately $1.3 to $1.5 million. So it's a big improvement for the folks at Washington Park.
And did you want to also go to the third slide just to break out?
Sure, next slide.
The numbers.
Yeah, next slide. So basically, if you look at this slide, it's a table, and this is also, this entire drainage report, drainage design was reviewed by Soil Conservation Service and approved, and also by DENREC. The existing conditions, you'll see the first line, 17 acres. The 100-year, 10-year peak flow rate is 24.32 CFS, 100-year 56.4 CFS. If you look at developed conditions, the 100-year storm is reduced from 56.4 CFS down to 2.54 CFS. So that's cubic feet per second, by the way. So it's a huge amount of water being rerouted away from Washington Park. And when I say huge, huge. Also improves, which is not shown on the slide, also dramatically improves the drainage in Johnson Way. Several times over the last 3 or 4 years, I think McConnell Development was approached by the city of Newcastle because of constant ponding and flooding that was taking place, not only in the existing basin, but also in Johnson Way. So this cleans up for good the poor drainage in that area.
Thank you, Mark. Chairman, Commissioner members, I didn't know if that generated some other questions, but that is sort of while not directly the legal standard that we're here to talk about, it certainly helps bring context, I think, to everything that's going on here. There's a lot of moving parts. And rather than just present you Lot A and nothing more, which I think would have really been unfair and not giving you this broader context, we did spend quite a bit of time this past week trying to break this down in a way that was digestible for you. I apologize again that it took a little bit longer than we would have liked. But if we didn't give you all this context, I think you really would have been lost in terms of these bigger picture items, which are very important both to the city, to my client, and the neighbors to our north.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Joe, did you have some questions that?
I do have some questions. I believe most of them are probably for Chris. So Chris, I understand tonight we're here to make a recommendation or approve, I should say, the development plan and the landscape plans or plan. So I seen that Lot A on a previous record plan was classified as private open space. I'm assuming that this land development plan reclassifies that now?
No, it's zoned I, industrial.
It is zoned I, but on a previous record plan, it was classified as private open space.
I'm not sure what record plan that is. And that, I would typically, consider that an issue in a residential subdivision where there was a explicit need to set aside open space for the residents. I don't know why it would be labeled as such on a previous record plan in an industrial subdivision. So I'm not familiar with that plat.
Well, my guess is it was labeled that way because there was a stormwater management pond on it.
Exactly right.
I think Mr. Ziegler can help sorry to interrupt, but I think Mr. Ziegler can help Mr. Day if you ask.
Yeah, Mr. Day is exactly correct. I think the plan you were referring to is a 1996 or 1997 record plan prepared by a different consulting firm. And because that basin was a stormwater management facility, they designated it as open space. I don't think I would have designated it as open space, but it just was referring to a stormwater management basin and not a parking lot or not a building. So they called it open space.
Okay. So I know we're not here to vote on parcel B, but I'm kind of confused. As far as I could see, it is zoned open space and recreational, but there's a parking lot on it, and that didn't seem to be an acceptable use by the zoning code. So did that come before this group before and get approved?
Can I address that? Yeah.
Sure.
Approximately 10 years ago, essentially, the history of this site goes way back before me, but there was this entire facility, including what currently now is open space and recreational, that was all industrial. So there was footings and a lot of pavement that was on this site in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So essentially, we did a survey and we mapped all the impervious areas, the footings, the foundations, and that impervious area was grandfathered in. So we cleaned up the site and consolidated the impervious area in one area, and that is how that existing parking lot got there. There was already paving there from the 40s and the 50s.
Mark, I heard Jeff say that, and I understand that, but don't we have a non-conforming situation now where the parking lot's in an open space and recreation zoning district?
Well, Joe, I wasn't involved at the time, but if this was permitted and authorized based on that theory, that certainly makes sense to me. I'm happy to go back and look at that with my client and analyze that. I've not done that with this application because that existing parking is not part of this application. But I'm certainly willing to go back with Mr. Bergstrom and Mr. Ziegler and my client and look at that. But when I asked about it, I was told it was permitted and approved and nobody appealed that. So that's what I know about that. And again, happy to dig into that at another time, but we, obviously need to move forward. We're asking to move forward on Lot A at this time.
So I guess my next question on Lot A, obviously I went out to the site and I seen, the amount of construction going on Lot A and Lot C. So if we're approving the development plan for A tonight, I'm assuming there's some approval process before it gets to them for earth movement?
Is there a stormwater management plan or anything else you have to see?
Yes, yeah. This plan has been reviewed by Soil Conservation and by DENREC, and they've approved the plan. And DENREC was actually happy with this design because of the fact that we reroute the water away from Washington Park.
So that means, so just so I'm clear, because I'm new on this board, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this. So if DENREC approves it, you have the right to start the construction even if we don't approve the development plan?
No. The DENREC approved the stormwater management basin. The parking lot was approved by also, even with the city approval, has to also be approved by DENREC. So the parking lot needs DENREC's approval, Soil Conservation's approval, and also the city of Newcastle.
So,
Joe, are you asking about the relocation of the stormwater management pond? Because I don't believe the parking lot itself is under construction today. The pond's just been relocated, which was approved by the city.
Well, I certainly see the pond, the construction of the new pond going on, but I also see where the old pond's already being filled in.
Sure. The approval of the pond being relocated was approved by the city. I mean, Jeff Bergstrom is aware of the situation, has not indicated that presents any kind of code issue. And we certainly weren't aware of any by filling it in. I was out there today. I didn't see any blacktop going down or curbing.
I come from a different world where we actually have approved land development plans before projects start. So I'm asking, I'm not saying that I'm an expert on this, but I was surprised to see the amount of construction and that we're voting on a land development plan tonight.
Well, the vote, just to be clear, it is for a parking lot with striping that has not been installed yet. I understand, of course, you and I interact regularly in Newcastle County, and certainly their review standards and the number of people who review these types of application are more increased in number. As you know, some jurisdictions don't even require the stormwater management as part of the plan approval. In this case, I understand from Mark Ziegler, the stormwater management design has been approved by DENREC. And the permitting to relocate the pond was provided by the city without objection and without any appeal. So I guess what Joe is asking is, what do you have to do, Mark, to pull up? If they approve this tonight, what do you have to do to pull a permit next with Mr. Bergstrom?
Well, we would, if this were approved by the city of Newcastle tonight, we already have DENREC's approval to fill in the basin. So the owner or the builder would apply for a permit to build the parking lot, which is not started. The paving hasn't started. There's no parking lot in there. So this throughout the drainage and it partially filled in the basin, the existing basin. But there's no parking lot construction that has taken place yet.
Okay,
It won't take place until it's.
Sorry about that. So I had one more question.
Go ahead.
So on Lot C, on a previous record plan on Lot C, it looked like the, I'll say the southeast corner, the very corner of parcel C, there was some wetlands designated. So with the new stormwater management area, it looks like that takes up part of the wetlands. Are you creating wetlands somewhere else? They were determined not to be wetlands. Could you just explain that? Because I have had some other people inquire about that also.
Well, yeah, the record plan you're referring to was done approximately, Joe, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And back in those days, the wetland regulations were different. And the company that we employed, it was Jim McCulley of Watershed Eco,
Mm-hmm.
and he worked for the Army Corps of Engineers. So it was a different, the rules today are different. These were clearly man-made wetlands, and we are not impacting any of those wetlands. These are the wetlands that are left intact. And in fact, the wetlands are created. These wetlands were created by a berm that Newcastle County built to install a sewer line. So this is all wetlands that was created by the county, Newcastle County, on this property, because there's a small berm there with a existing sanitary sewer line.
Yeah, Joe, there was, I mean, 20 years ago was before my time, probably when I was just getting started in all of this with working for the county. But there's been a U.S. Supreme Court case that has made clear there's got to be a hydrological connection for it to actually be a core jurisdiction wetland. The man-made ones do not count generally with the core. Now, the county rules are different. County definition is broader than the core. But the Corps' definition would be what would have applied in this case. And again, I wasn't involved with McCulley in that, but I certainly accept Mark Ziegler's representations.
I understand.
So
Like I
basically,
said,
we got a
I'm
new
asking the
wetland
questions. So I do have one more question, if you don't mind. So I assume that there's a maintenance agreement for the stormwater management areas for all the property owners in the park?
My client's indicating that they just handle it themselves. They have not distributed out. They handle the maintenance and the upkeep.
What does that involve?
The maintenance of the ponds, Mark, would you like to dig in?
Sure. First of all, the ponds today are highly regulated. They're inspected on an annual basis by, if it's not in the county, it's inspected by DENREC. And I can tell you right now that they do a very good job on making sure that these ponds are maintained in accordance with the approved design plans. So essentially, McConnell Development, because I think they own 90% or all of the park, they are the entity, I don't know what the official entity is, that maintain the stormwater management basins. There's also one in the other side of the park, a big basin that's maintained.
But we have heard, the neighbors certainly raised with us concerns about the pond, and what we've shared, and I can represent to you as a land use attorney, is these ponds have been built for about 20 years, and the requirements have become more and more stringent over those 20 years, but they are carefully designed per DENREC regs to, for example, avoid mosquitoes, because there was a concern by one of the neighbors about mosquitoes, and that is regulated to proper depth. You don't want to have real shallow water. You want to have certain depths of a foot or more to avoid mosquitoes, for example. You also have these step-down benches off the edges of the pond. So if somebody were to unfortunately fall into the pond, there is a bench that goes out 3 to 5 feet that's only about a foot in depth. So that's a safety feature that's built into these ponds. Again, these hundreds of these ponds have been built around Newcastle County for the past 20 years. Also, something that happens, and this is Mother Nature, but it's all good, is these ponds, you've probably seen people fishing out of them from time to time throughout the county. And you wonder how the fish get there. Well, the fish aren't stocked in most instances. The birds actually that migrate, the Canadian geese and other fowl, they transport eggs, fish eggs from other areas as they migrate and travel from pond to pond and actually stock these ponds by Mother Nature's wisdom. And you'll eventually, in 3 or 4 years, actually have bass in these ponds. The bass eat mosquito eggs and mosquito larvae. So the ponds are well thought out. They're highly regulated, as Mark indicated. They become more and more regulated over time. Every 4 to 5 years, we generally see some updates. And this pond is approved full DNREC compliance and has to be made and maintained in accordance therewith. It is a much more superior design than the pond that had been functioning historically at Lot A. I don't think there's any question that this pond design is far better than that design.
So, and I don't have any doubts about the design or the inspection of the pond. I'm sure the design of the pond is well above what code requires. But obviously, as you know, without a maintenance agreement, if the property owner the property owner in Center Point starts selling off pieces of the properties, then we end up with 1 or 2 property owners, and then we have a dispute over who's going to maintain the pond. So
Well,
without a maintenance agreement, that really is up in the air.
Well, but Joe, in fairness, that is a code issue that is regulated through the ponds being approved. If the city is concerned about that, we're happy to have that discussion. If somebody wants Mr. McConnell to impose a self-created maintenance obligation and record it, we'll certainly have that discussion. But and it's certainly a fair question. I get it, but that's not before the board this evening. But if that's something you're looking for us to do, we're happy to look into that. We certainly can't afford to be delayed over things that aren't in the code, but we're happy to work with the city in good faith. We always have been.
Sean,
Yes.
let me bring it back. I want to start to bring it back to what we're here for before we go too far astray. Because they're all relevant issues. And I mean, we are looking at it from the aspect of, yes, we're here to look at Lot A, but there are elements of B and C that do have influence and vice versa. But again, I want to bring it back because I've got some other things here we've got to look at. Jeff, do you have things in here that the commissioner should be aware of? Comments, thoughts, inputs?
I think this is a great improvement. I've been after the pond upgrade for, almost 30 years now. It was a dog drill when I showed up here in 1991. It didn't function well. I can't believe it was permitted in the first place, but that was the case. We managed to demolish the existing Hoover International property, and it's now turned into a beneficial grandfathered use for parking on the site. The water tower's gone, the substation's gone, electricity lines have been replaced. This is an awfully nice project from my point of view. And it takes the water out of Washington Park and from going underneath the railroad tracks where it did and puts it down in a more appropriate, much larger culvert and gets it out to Army Creek in a clean state, not a state that's had marginal water quality improvement. So I think it's a good deal.
Okay. Chris, do you have any more inputs for us?
Just to reiterate that the landscape plan, by right plan, and the lighting plan are associated with the development plan. The by right landscape plan is in conformance with the regulations previously cited. The lighting plan, the fixtures are the type that are full cutoff. They have submitted a lighting plan that shows the light impact fading at the property line near parcel A, which is consistent with the general performance standard requirement of the city code that says to avoid glare on adjacent properties. So I think that the lighting plan and landscape plan are really the two fundamental aspects of the site plan, because there's no building associated with the parking lot. Relative to basic zoning, as far as the I zone, the industrial zone, parking lots are not listed, but accessory uses to permitted uses are allowed by right in the industrial zone. And the parking lot in the industrial zone is the most intense zoning district within the city, and it allows your typical range of industrial uses. So the parking lot as an accessory use to the existing Amazon building is a permitted use in the I zone. If the Planning Commission chooses to approve the by right plan, I would only ask that you do so conditioned upon it being revised to reflect the by right landscape plan in the event the Board of Adjustment does not approve the requested variance. Again, the development plan has the parking layout of the variance landscape plan.
Could we not, much to what you suggested before, our opinion on the consideration of the alternate plan with this recommendation?
Yes, feel free to opine again on the alternative plan, but I would recommend that you clearly consider that you bifurcate, the by right decision and the recommendation or general discussion or general thoughts about the alternative plan associated with the variance application.
Okay.
That will be forwarded to the Board of Adjustment.
All right. Before I get to the commissioners, I have some public comments that have come in. And I don't know how many I have. I know I got 3 before I came on to the meeting. So I will read those, and then I'll open it for public comments for those that are on in the meeting with us. So I have one here from Mr. Halco, and he says, is the proposed parking lot going in a place where there is currently existing wet pond? I also have one from Christopher Owens. To whom it may concern, I am writing to be included in the public comment section of the Planning Commission meeting this evening. The removal of all trees at the end of the neighborhood in order to install stormwater diversion pipeline has resulted in several issues. We have no notice that this was being done. We have been in contact with the owner of the commercial property and their council. We would like to have trees replanted to give us back some privacy so that we cannot see the buildings that are now exposed to the residential street. We would like those trees to divide the residential street from the open space and recreational area. It was noted that the landscape plan, it was noted on the landscape plan that the landowner is required to replant 1 tree for every 5 parking spaces. Proposed landscaping, section 230-2BG, provide screening of proposed parking lot from public street, Johnson Way, provide a minimum 10% landscape area for parking lot, 17.10% provided. Provide 1 shade tree for 5 parking spaces, 226 parking spaces proposed, 46 shade trees required, 46 shade trees provided. The new parking lot has 226 spaces, 46 shade trees are needed here. The existing parking lot does not have 1 shade tree for every 5 parking spaces. The existing lot has 333 spaces provided, and there would be 67 trees planted for this lot as well. We would like to see these shade trees planted as a buffer between our houses and the industrial park. There are no longer any places for any animals to live. There is a lot of barren acreage and large mountains of dirt. We would like to have allowable additional trees planted. The acres of trees removed cannot easily, the acres of trees removed cannot be easily replaced, but we were looking to at least have some privacy restored by overlapping lines of trees. We have seen the plans and would welcome additional trees to be planted in excess of those plans. We'd also like to have a privacy fence installed around the existing parking lot, parallel to Oak Street, and also the entire length of the existing lot where the fences, where it faces homes that we cannot see or be seen from such. We would like additional trees to be planted around the perimeters of the parking lots to replace those that were placed there when the lot was built. We would also appreciate an effort on the part of the landowner to advise the tenants and employees of tenants to keep noise to a minimum. This included the vehicle alarms that are set off every shift change to locate the vehicles to be used. The other retention pond is being filled to build a new parking lot. If trees needed to be planted there to satisfy this code, that is acceptable. We would also like to ensure that it won't have the same issues with the lot, including the light and the noise encroachment. Thanks, Chris Owens. I have one more, if I can get that. Let me disappear here and that is, this one is from Angela Q. It says, hello, I am writing for the public comment section of the meeting regarding the above subject matter history. I have previously written to the current city council president, the mayor, state representatives, and the building official for the city of Newcastle. They are aware of the issues with the latest construction along Johnson Way, the land zone, open space, and recreation, according to the city and provided plans, where one extensive parking area was already placed and another is slated for construction later this year. The land is adjacent to a residential neighborhood. Request. The original missives written to the city council et al. Were to request the plans for what was being built during this phase of construction. We became informed of this activity when heavy equipment arrived through our residential streets into the acres of trees and understory removed en masse. We are aware now that this is private property and that this includes open space and recreation as well as industrial zone property. Absent any notice of construction, we were understandably befuddled by the sheer magnitude of activity occurring. Current status is all trees and vegetation were removed. Huge piles of earth remain where there was once trees and wildlife habitats, which would seem to be adverse to the interests of the city and other conservation efforts herein. Apparently, a stormwater pipeline is being installed to improve the current issues of flooding within the neighborhood. And reviewing the code, there is an entire section dedicated to floodplain management, although this seems to apply to property actually prone to flooding. We have not seen the environmental studies that were done for this project. We are aware that the variance is being sought for the landscaping plan for the as yet constructed parking lot, next to the surprise parking lot already in service by online purveyors of goods. The employees utilized the lot to pick up their van for the day's work, identifying them by setting off the alarms and locating the vehicles that is flashing lights and beeping its horns. The variances related to the trees are required by code to be planted within the new lot. The code appears on the plan to direct one shade tree for every 5 spaces. For the new lot of 226 spaces, 46 shade trees are required. The existing lot does not have one shade tree for every 5 spaces currently. For the 333 spots, there would have to be 67 trees planted. Had it been required when the plan was put into place circa 2014, we would be happy to have those shade trees planted back within the open space area that was recently vacated by all vegetation. We would like a sufficient barrier of depth to the property so that the new open view is migrated or remediated back to the former level of privacy. We would not, however, like to have trees planted that will grow to fill in the space. Additionally, if the remaining utility pole can be removed from the entrance, the landscape architect and the McConnells would be happy to add additional trees through the throughway, increase privacy and definition between open space and the residential zones. In addition, the side of the existing parking lot within the open space area is completely visible to those living on 12th and Juniper Streets. A fence or adequate tree coverage around the existing lot would reduce the sound and light pollution from that lot as well. A fence of pressure treated wood of quality that could weather appropriately is strongly suggested. We would also like to return some semblance of habitat to the wildlife in the area. The plan is for understory has been removed from the updated plan. There are deer, foxes, skunks, raccoons, and a veritable plethora of birds and bats that have been displaced. We are also aware of the existing retention pond will be likely replaced or filled in at some point in the future. Despite this plan being characterized as a 50-year plan, it is incumbent upon me to note that zoning is seldom upheld in perpetuity. Open space and recreational is preferable from this side of the street to any other development of the property. We would be adverse to having any more structures erected or installed without proper notice and hearing on such additions. I would like the record to reflect that now. Quiet enjoyment. The quiet enjoyment of one's own property has been severely depleted. The 6-foot fence around the existing lot is being provided for in the newly proposed plans. The trees that were planted there and removed from this new construction will also be replaced. The light poles are quite high and cast bright lights into the lot and beyond. They interfere with any hope of true night. I am told by Michael McConnell and the land use attorney, Sean Tucker, that this will be remediated with deflectors to control the light cast into a more downward positioning. The sound pollution, I am sure, will also be remedied at some point with a better plan for vehicle identification, number of spaces, match the vehicle number as well as keys, etc. Other such industries have figured out this issue with multitude of light-colored and styled vehicles. The retention ponds, we have also been assured, have been planned according to DNREC code and will have steps for each depth to prevent drowning in these attractive nuisances. We have also been assured that the depth of the water will alleviate issues and mosquitoes concurrently. We appreciate the care and attention to prevention of mosquito-borne illnesses as well as the safety and welfare of our community. Conclusion. We are working with the commercial landowner to come to amenable solutions to all parties. The variances is being sought in order to meet construction delivery deadline and plan tenant for the as yet completed parking lot bordered by the trustees of Newcastle Common property. The importance of mitigating the damage wrought by the current construction is the focus, planting trees for privacy and replacing those that were planted previously and removed from around the existing lot, installing deflectors of light, installing fence around the residential facing sections of the existing lot, reducing the noise pollution with messaging to the tenants of the existing lot, planting the other grasses for ground cover to alleviate flooding that will occur, and noticing that the public when other projects are being planned for the open space and recreational zone are our request. We would thoroughly hope that none of these issues occur if the new lot is completed. and that it is adequately hidden from view. Light is deflected down, noise is at a minimum from the tenants, and other habitats are established for the remaining displaced wildlife. Kindest regards, Angela Quinn. Then that, I think, like I said, I think that's all I got before I step into this meeting. Kim, do we have any others that have come in by chance?
Jack, can you hear me?
Yes.
Did you get the one from Fred Creeby?
I do not believe I did now.
Okay, that one is requesting that the telephone pole be removed at the end of 13th Street before the landscaping work begins. This will allow the landscapers to plant trees in its place, which will improve the natural screen of the parking lot. Please bear in mind that the existing screen has been removed and needs to be restored. So there were 4 altogether, including the pictures that I just showed with the last one.
Okay. Okay, then with that, Kim will open it up for public comment from those that are on the meeting here.
Okay, if anybody would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. In the, you have to click the button that says raise your hand.
I just
Okay,
have one thing to
Councilmember
add.
Gross.
Oh, sorry. I just have one thing to add. In addition, I was out there today at the end of 13th Street talking to a couple of the residents, and they raised a lot of the issues that were covered in those comments. One that was not brought up, that was a concern, was the amount of dust that's currently being generated by the construction vehicles. I didn't see any of the water trucks you typically see on site there. And I'll tell you, it was getting pretty intense. I had to actually leave because every time one of the Cirillo trucks went by, it was kicked up quite a cloud. I just wanted to make you aware of that, and just see if anything's being done to address that.
Okay, Mr. Gross.
Yes, good evening, board. Mr. Tucker, I guess I just have 2 kind of observations. It seems like in many projects you anticipate kickback, pushback from especially residential. I'm not sure why, like you said, you did not reach out to the neighborhood, even if it was during the phase that didn't need public acceptance. But just as an observation, I would certainly recommend continuing keeping your open line of communication because it could possibly save you a lot of aggravation and less demands the clearer you are and the more upfront you are with that community. Second question is, have you chosen what firms, as far as the landscaping and lighting, are you going with? Have you guys committed to particular firms or products? That was a question. Mr. Tucker?
Mr. Chairman, I would advise against questions directly to the applicant to the extent that they can be answered by the planning commission or staff.
Okay, then
we can answer them, or Mr. Chairman, if you wanted Mr. Tucker to answer, then that would be up to the planning commission.
Okay.
Typically, the planning commission doesn't get involved in the vendors or contractors that would be used for a proposed project. The plans represent the types of plants that are required and the light fixtures that are consistent with the code that disseminate the light directly down and avoid glare. That's as much detail as is required at the site plan review level.
And I agree with that.
Okay, I thank you for directing it. And I guess lastly, Mr. Day, I really appreciate your insight and being persistent with basically looking at with any hesitation or questions that you might have being in your industry as long as you've been. So thank you for your insight and questioning. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think you had asked me to respond to the first question. When I got involved, Mr. Gross, in June, and I visited the site and spoke to my client, the first thing I did was identify the neighboring property owners and prepared a letter that went out almost 3 weeks ago via Federal Express to all the neighboring property owners, inviting them to contact me, to email me, to call me on my personal cell, and invited them to have a meeting so that we could address concerns related to the prior permitting, which was legal and permitted by the city. And it, obviously, because of COVID, it took some time for folks to get back to me. We spent 2 hours on the site this morning. I'd emailed with a couple of folks who reached out to me over the past 3 weeks. But as soon as I got involved, we found out who the people were that were closest, because I had heard through the grapevine there were concerns, and we reached out to those folks. And that's how I do every project. I normally form working groups with neighbors and work with them for 4 months. But again, this is a 2.2 acre parking lot, and we are trying to move through it diligently because we want to keep Amazon happy and on track and keep them here in Newcastle, Delaware. And at the same time, reaching out to folks. So I will continue to do that. We have agreed with about 14 people who met me on site today, with my client who was also there, to continue to talk through the alternative plan. Assuming we're approved tonight, we will continue those discussions and go to the Board of Adjustment on that on a timely way. We've already talked about some additional plannings on the alternative plan and the concerns, and it was a very positive meeting. One of the people who wrote the email this evening that was read by the chairman, Angela, it was a very positive meeting, and she was happy that we all finally got together. Some of the immediate neighbors were there, and they were very happy to see the landscaping plan and understand how it was going to happen. So your points are all well taken, but I wanted you to know we did reach out some time ago after we got all our facts and understood what the concerns were.
All right. Any other questions from the public? All right, then.
Wait, I have one from Angela.
Okay.
So I just wanted to note that I'm actually on the call. And I know that you've already read my email and that I did have some contact with Mr. Tucker starting, unfortunately, this Friday. I was not one of the recipients of the letters. I received it from another neighbor. Obviously, we were well into the construction at that point in time. The issues that are affecting us are basically the fact that all of the acreage, if you pull this area up on Google Maps and you've seen some of the aerial photos when they were explaining the direction that the water would be flowing at this point in time, you could see that there was the dirt lot, which is actually the paved lot now. And then all of the trees that were next to it are now gone. The trees that accompanied my email today are obviously missing. There are only 1 or 2 trees that are left from the view that we have. So we're just trying to ensure that we can get some sort of return of landscaping and some sort of curtain of foliage of some sort in between us and the now highly visible industrial park that, you know, we weren't really aware that was behind us before, aside from the other smaller issues of the light pollution and noise pollution, et cetera. But I just want to know that I was on the call and I am listening. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Any more, Kim?
I don't see any other hands raised. No.
Okay.
Can
Then
I
with
ask,
that,
I'm sorry, can I ask Angela a question? Are you satisfied with the alternative plan that that's been presented, with the additional foliage that would be rerouted from parking lot A that we're discussing tonight to really buffer between your property and the future?
Well, so I'm under the impression that you've actually seen the area, whereas I'm not sure that everyone else on this call has actually been out to the site. So in a word, no, but this is the best that they're offering at this point in time. Shade trees that are supposed to be planted in the parking lot, they're willing to shift other types of trees to be planted in between. It's obviously not going to be very deep. It's, some of the trees in some of the areas are only, 1 tree deep, and then there's another layer that's several feet in from there. It's going to be a while before those trees grow to be of the size in order to even provide any privacy again. And the part about the animals, I'm not joking. I mean, there really are a bunch of other animals that are literally on the street at night. I do see skunks, I do see raccoons, I do see foxes, I do see all of these animals that don't actually have a habitat anymore, that the neighbors would view the deer at night, etc. So it's the best that we have available to us. It's a private landowner. I've been told that over and over again. Again, the issues that we had where we had no idea that this was going to happen. It's an improvement, quote unquote, project. I know Mr. Bergstrom is very excited to have the storm water treatment, but at this point in time, that doesn't really fix the sunlight that's now encroaching, the increased energy bills, the fact that we're going through this construction period with the dust, the heavy equipment, etc. It's,
Right. It's not, there's not this change, we can't go backwards on it, but
no,
moving forward, this is something that there'd be at least some improvement for you from the current situation.
So if they're putting in another parking lot and they would like the variance in order to take the trees out of the new parking lot that doesn't exist yet and then put them along our property lines again, then if that's the best that we can do, then that sort of has to be acceptable. So we're trying to have the conversation. We're trying to continue having the conversation. I'm hoping that that is actually the case. Obviously, the neighborhood is not represented by its own council. We don't have the same deep pockets that a landowner would have in this situation. So, we're working toward the same goal, I think, in order to have the neighborhood happy with the construction that's going on adjacent to, where we're living.
Thank you.
And if I may, just to add to that, the applicant will be moving forward with the variance request, and there will be opportunity for additional public comment at the Board of Adjustment hearing. And the Board of Adjustment can obviously set conditions on the approval of the variance. So while the Planning Commission's role tonight regarding the variance and the alternative plan is commentary and recommendation, again, the Board of Adjustment will be taking additional public comment, and they can set conditions as they see fit to mitigate the development and the variance request.
All right, let's come through the commission then. Thoughts from any and all? Who wants to start? Erin, you want to start?
No, not particularly. Let me think about this for a moment.
All right. John?
Yeah, I think I spoke out of turn last time. A lot of I was down there on 13th Street today talking to a couple of residents, and a lot of the issues that came up in the comments we talked about, but there's one in particular, and I heard Angela mention it, was just the amount of dust that's being generated right now by the construction vehicles. I know that's something you have to deal with in a construction situation, but I didn't see any, typically you'll see the water trucks going by that'll be spraying water on the ground to kind of mitigate the dust. But it was pretty intense. It was mentioned it's getting on cars, and I happened to be right downwind of it where I was. And it was quite a nuisance. So I don't know if that's being addressed. Maybe I just didn't see a water truck go by. Maybe it's a timing issue, but that was an issue that was raised by the residents that I just wanted to bring to light.
All right. Jonathan?
I actually, I am inclined to, if I understood it correctly, and Mr. Rogers, please correct me if I misspeak. I am inclined to take Mr. Rogers' advice that we ask for a condition of our approval of the by right landscaping, or not, of the by right parking lot development by imposing as conditions that the fence and the lighting cutoffs and the landscaping shown for the existing parking lot and the two retention basins to protect the neighbors from those uses be installed, period. Mr. Rogers, did I understand correctly that that was your advice?
The only landscaping shown off of Lot A associated with the by right site plan is some additional screening along the parking lot along Lot B.
Right, and that was why the condition would be to provide the screening, fence, and landscaping shown in the alternate scheme as part of the by right scheme. Or did I misunderstand what you were advising?
So you're suggesting that the additional alternative landscaping proposed associated with the variance request be applied to the by right plan?
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's, as a planning commission, you can do that.
Because that way they can move ahead with their timeline and keep the tenant happy, and we can provide these basic protections for the community.
But so you want the landscaping, all of the shade trees in the parking lot?
Well, if they have to do that by code, they have to do that by code. I agree with them that that on that parcel A with the new parking lot, there doesn't seem to be a lot of point to the following every last detail of the code, but I didn't realize we had the ability to waive that, right? That's what the variance is for.
Correct.
So that's not within our discretion, but if I'm understanding correctly, it is within our discretion to ask for the condition that they provide those amenities for the other two parcels to protect the neighbors. So that's what I would prefer. And then if they get the variance, good on them.
I'm not sure I recommended that. I just presented that.
All right.
Offering that additional landscaping as the as a mitigation for the variance request.
Okay, so I apologize for, I didn't mean to put words in your mouth, but it is within our purview to impose that condition. I'll take that as a yes.
Jonathan, I think I like what you're saying there. I appreciate what you're saying there, and basically deciding on one, but connecting it to this future variance.
Well, I think Mr. Rogers did say we need to consider the things separately. So connecting it to the variance just in the sense that in their variance request they're proposing some decent screening in terms of the fence and the landscaping on the adjacent parcels. So let that be incorporated in the by right plan and let them move ahead without delay.
I'm a little confused now.
Okay.
Jonathan, are you suggesting the full alternative landscape plan
Well, I'm not allowed to do that, am I? Because that requires a variance.
What I'm saying is the full alternative landscape plan, including the full landscaping within parking lot A?
Um, Well, I guess that's what I have to do, isn't it? If I want the other landscaping, because the new parking lot, the code requires it, right? I don't have any. I'm not that attached to that because I don't think Amazon needs to be protected from itself. But I don't. Right, as the Planning Commission, we don't have any authority to waive that requirement. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, you cannot waive the internal parking lot
Right.
landscaping requirements.
Okay.
But I also think it's a stretch to require the full amount of landscaping to buffer
Right.
the land disturbance 2 parcels over from the existing parking lot.
Okay.
While that disturbance is associated with the filling of that existing stormwater pond, it's not really on the table as part of the site plan. The site plan is kicked in by land development associated with non-residential development that will require a building permit or certificate of occupancy. So I view the site plan to be narrowly construed to be associated with the proposed parking lot and the lighting associated with the proposed parking lot. They've offered some additional landscaping on Lot B to buffer the proposed parking lot from the existing residents, but all of the other landscaping that they're proposing to buffer the existing grading of the new stormwater pond, I think is not necessarily associated with the site plan, the by right site plan.
Chris, just so that so you can clarify for me. So does the Planning Commission have the ability to approve the development plan with the by right landscaping plan and approve the development plan with the alternative landscaping plan contingent upon the variance being approved?
Yes.
So we could approve both to allow them to go forward from here.
It would, I take that back. It would be, you would approve the by right plan. And then if they get the variance, the alternative landscape plan kicks in by virtue of the Board of Adjustments decision if they approve the variance. So
And it doesn't.
That will be implemented by staff as approved by the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Brenda.
I had two comments. I guess the first, I'll go with this one first. So my natural question is around Lot C, and I know we're not here about Lot C, but I can't help myself to ask, like, what are the intentions with Lot C? So I know like there's big piles of dirt and there's the stormwater management pond, but are we going to be back here again with another parking lot topic? Or are we kind of done with that? Like I'm just curious if you guys have any insight to if there are any plans with Lot C to put something like a parking lot there as a natural extension of parking lot A, parking lot B, and maybe parking lot C.
Commissioner, it's a very fair question. In fact, we discussed that with the neighbors this morning. There are no plans to do any additional parking where the stormwater management is. In fact, its current zoning would not permit that because there's no grandfathering because there's not existing impervious there, unlike what that was found at B. So those ponds are there for the long haul. Based on everything we know right now, we see no immediate design or plans to come in and rezone to do parking. Could that change in the future? It could, but it would have to come back to the city for a rezoning and or annexation of some sort, and that would have to come back through full review. And certainly if I'm involved and think my client will have me involved. Hopefully, we'll certainly reach. I looked at my client to get a nod.
I was wondering if he was standing over you.
And I'll send out my 20 letters to the immediate adjoining property owners like I did on this round and ask them to please contact their neighbors. So nothing planned, but it is certainly something that could happen hypothetically in the future, but we'd have to go through a very public process to achieve that.
Okay, and then my second comment or suggestion is really around this theme of being a good corporate citizen. So, we've already talked about all these things. Like, I know that if I were living in one of those homes, I would probably be a little frustrated.
Sure.
And I would maybe see if there's an opportunity for the folks at Amazon in partnership with the owners there at the industrial park to say, have a talk with the employees to say, hey guys, don't go sending off, your beepers and your lights at 3 o'clock in the morning or a shift change or whenever it might be happening. And perhaps they've already done that. So I'm just kind of thinking through how I would feel if the exhaust and the noise and the dust and the headlights and the beeping were going on. It would be very, uncomfortable. And I would probably be even more irritated, looking for more reasons to be mad about these parking lots going in and all of the vegetation being pulled out.
Yep.
So
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I think that's just something, kind of a theme, hearing that, I think it was Bezos made like $13 billion in one day last week. The feeling is, hey, can't you just put in a couple extra 100 trees for these guys and create barriers? Again, being a good corporate citizen. And I don't know if we can connect the dots that way, but it's hard to stay away from a comment like that when you see big numbers like that in the market. So I couldn't help myself with that one. Like, can we just put in barrier?
Yeah, it is a fair observation, and I've been out there at least 3 times. I was out there this morning. I saw the trucks again and the noise, and there is a water truck that comes and visits. I want to do a shore, and that's regular. And I saw the dust this morning, and one did come on site eventually today, according to my client. So we will be careful about that. But your points are well taken. Remember, my client is the landlord, not Amazon. And so Amazon, negotiates their leases, and, my client does his best too to keep it fair and balanced. Your points are well taken. The neighbors did alert us to the beeping and the alarm. Apparently some of these folks are setting off the alarms to find their trucks. Totally unacceptable. We learned that today. We've already scheduled next week to talk to Amazon about this. First, we learned about it. Some people are apparently parking in the community and walking through the construction to get to work. We're going to nip that in the bud immediately as well. And we're also going to see if they can move their staging area, because again, we learned a lot today from our neighbors meeting and talking, move that staging area from the rear of the parking next to the community, and see if it's possible to do that in the front of the parking, closer to the building itself instead of in the back of the lot along Johnson Way, right? Johnson Way. So we heard those same things today, Commissioner, and we've already taken steps to talk to Amazon about that. And as a landlord, we can regulate some of that because they shouldn't be parking next door. They should not be setting off their alarms into their vehicles. So we are going to nip that in the bud promptly.
Yeah, maybe they just get like an assigned parking spot so they know where they have to go every day and they don't have to beep to find their car. And
Agreed,
glad to hear
agreed.
the drainage problem is resolved, or at least 97% of it. So I guess the residents should be happy about that. So those are my
That is
three.
definitely, I think Mr. Thank you. I think Mr. Berksham said he'd been working on that for 30 years. So we were happy to get that done too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail?
From my perspective, the alternative plan is definitely better than the by right plan for the community. However, it sounds like it's been put together very last minute, including for us. It was hard to keep up with all of the changes, and And I'm sure it's like that for the residents. It sounds like there's been a lot of very recent communication with the residents. So I think we're just supposed to make a recommendation because this really goes to the Board of Adjustment. But we recommend that, or we should recommend that the alternative landscape plan and lighting plan, that you make an effort to gather the community input. And, you know, I don't know if the 726 one is the perfect answer because I'm not sure that you do either. I think that you've been putting it together kind of on the fly, but it's certainly much better than the just putting all of the trees on Lot A. And then having said that, if we're supposed to make a recommendation for the by right plan, it looks fine to me, but that's not the preferred way.
Understood. Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, Vera? Where is Vera? Vera? Kim, do we have Vera still?
No, I think she's gone.
All right, and Bill Walters, have we been able to get him? I mean, has we been able to connect to him? I know his audio was out.
Is this, there's one phone, no, there's one phone. Is that Bill Walters? It's 9752, is that Bill Walters?
I'm not sure of, I have, let's see.
I was wondering if they would answer, but I don't think we have him on the line.
All right, then we'll go without.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Of Mr. Tucker? Sean, did you say that the retrofitting of the lights in parking lot B will happen with the by right plan or only with the variance plan?
We will do it for both regardless. That was something we heard loud and clear from the neighbors today. And my client's committed to doing that both ways, as well as continuing to meet with them now that we've had our first kickoff meeting. I made that commitment to Ms. Quinn, both in an email and in person today. So we'll do that with both, Mr. Rogers, and we will put on the record our commitment to continuing to meet with the community on the alternative plan.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. From my perspective, and this goes again, moving across over the Lot C, you have a lot of the pines that you're putting in there, the loppolly pines, the Virginia pines, things like that. I'm not a big fan of them, having had property where they were on it. After a few years, they get kind of scraggly. And then during the pollen season, they put a lot of pollen out. And then you've got those pine bark beetles that show up. There may be better pines that you can put in there that'll do the screening that you want to achieve. It's just a thought. It's not a requirement per se, but again, having essentially you're rearranging the environment there from that perspective. As you put things back, you don't want a maintenance problem 5 years from now, and you don't need the neighborhood up in arms again because the trees look like trash. Goes to the maintenance story that was earlier in the meeting. As far as the overall by right property, again, we go according to the code, and then I think suggesting that the Board of Adjustments seriously consider the alternative plan as they come forward with a variance. And so, Chris, to that point, we should bring this forward as two motions: one, to approve the parking lot, and then not approve, but to recommend the parking lot, and then two, to recommend the by right?
I think in reverse, to make a decision on the by right plan which is
Okay.
the planning commission's decision, and then to make a recommendation on the alternative plan for the benefit of the Board of Adjustment.
Okay.
And regarding your approval or disapproval of the by right plan, if you choose to approve it, I would condition it upon the lights in parking lot B being retrofitted, even under the by right plan, to the light fixtures as indicated in the submitted lighting plan.
Okay. So we will then go forward that in, according to Chris's recommendation, going with the by right plan, condition on the lights in both A and B being dimmed or focused downward. And then also with the recommendation, as you said, to for the alternative, should it go to when it goes to the Board of Adjustment? Am I correct in that?
Yeah, so I would ask for a motion on the by right plan and a decision and a vote and a decision.
Okay.
And the same on the variance request as a, but for a recommendation.
Okay. Kathy, do you have all of that by chance? Okay. All right, then I'm going to ask the commissions. I need a motion to accept the by right plan as presented for the parking lot A as submitted. Do I have a second?
Can I ask one other question? I'm sorry. Going back to what Gail said about so I'm just talking about the alternative plan. And in the note, it says 381 plants versus 118 plants. Like, that's like a 200 some plus increase in plants if we vote for the alternative. I guess we're voting for both. But I don't know if this was what you were saying, Gail, but like, is 381 enough? Like, is it the right plan? Is it,
right?
You know,
I don't know. I think there's more community input and more negotiation before it goes to the Board of Adjustment. So I don't know.
So I'm just trying to understand like what we're putting forward then.
If I'm understanding Mr. Rogers correctly, the first thing we need to decide is whether we approve or disapprove the by right plan for the parking lot. And if I remember correctly, also, he recommended that we impose a condition, if we approve it, that the lighting in the existing parking lot be corrected so that it doesn't spill light onto adjacent properties.
Correct.
Okay, and I am happy to make that motion.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All right, so we have Jonathan with the motion, Aaron with the second. Then I think we need to do a, all of those in favor?
You may want to, this is the time where you
Need
have
to roll.
one more discussion if you want to. Once it's a motion and seconded, it's time for discussion. If there's no discussion, you can call for a vote.
Okay. Any discussion on our item?
I think I would just note that I understand that we're at the limit of what we can impose as conditions, but I think that part of our approval here at least is encouraged by the reassurances we have from the applicant that they're going to deal in good faith with the neighbors and work to be better neighbors in the future. And I appreciate that a lot. And I think it's a very good sign.
Any other comments? Then can we have the vote? All those in favor of accepting the by right plan with the conditions of the lighting adjustments being made, both A and B? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we have Baron, John, Gail, Brenda, Jonathan, myself as as positive votes and no opposing votes. All right. Now the second discussion item was the alternative plan, and the do we have a motion to accept the alternative plan? Should there be, as they go to the variance?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Oh, is this, so the second vote on the alternative plan, I mean, do we want to also put on it these conditions around, like, you know, maybe I'm getting too specific here, but what the alternative plan currently proposes is 381 plants.
Right.
But what we're saying is, okay, we approve or we recommend that you can go with this alternative plan, but that might not be the right number. You still have more work to do here.
And I have no problem for that. You know, again, to what we have the commitments to do more community effort. But again, to them going forward, in order to go to the Board of Adjustments, we need to have, I would like, I think, to support that activity so that the neighborhood gets some screening.
Okay, so should that be part of the motion for the alternative?
I think it should.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
given the fact that yours is an advisory role to the Board of Adjustment, you need not vote strictly on the alternative plan that's in front of you. So a decision or a recommendation that the applicant continue to work with the neighborhood to refine the screening is an appropriate recommendation to make, you know,
Okay.
given your advisory role.
Okay, I like that.
All right. So I had a motion and a second. Any other discussion we want? Then do we have a vote? All those in favor of the alternative plan with continued discussion?
Um,
Go ahead.
No, now I'm confused.
Okay.
Because I thought that, and I'm sorry, I'm not that quick on the uptake tonight, as you've noticed. I had the sense that Mr. Rogers was telling us that our role here is strictly advisory.
Advisory, right.
And that it might, and I think this also is consistent with, and Gail, now you can both correct me when I'm misrepresenting what you said. But Gail made a good point that I think is consistent with what Mr. Rogers said, that we don't need to necessarily endorse any particular plan,
Right.
but can advise the
Board of Adjustment.
Advise the Board of Adjustment that we have no objection to their issuing a variance if the applicant has worked with the community to provide the amenities that are satisfactory to the neighbors.
All right.
And that would be what I would, if you were asking me for a motion, that would be the motion I'd offer. We're all in
Jonathan?
favor of granting a variance if the community's needs are met.
I am asking you for the motion, sir.
Okay, well, that was it then.
Kathy, did you get all of those words for the motion?
No, please, Jonathan, let's
Okay,
do that. Let's
so-
do that right
so-
now.
All right, okay. So I would move that we advise the Board of Adjustment that we have no objection in principle to a variance as long as the neighbors' reasonable requirements are met to the satisfaction of the Board of Adjustment.
Do I have a second?
I'll second
Maybe
that.
not.
All right, I have Aaron as a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Jonathan?
Aye.
So I have Gail, Brenda, Jonathan, John, and Aaron all in favor? Any opposed? No, I'm in favor as well, so that it's unanimous here. And with that, Mr. Tucker, I think we're kind of closed on this issue. My sincere suggestion here is that the community outreach be, one, accelerated, and two, be out there front and center. It's a polite in-your-face kind of deal. The more information they have as to what's going on, the less hostile they'll be in the coming. And you've heard my pitch before when we did the SPCA kind of thing about being good neighbors. You're talking about 20 properties on the line, but those 20 properties all have friends and families here in town. And it's how many other people now will have a thought and a feeling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not only for your client, but then for the Amazon people, you know, they're not going to be smiling at that smile box when it shows up. So outreach, I think, is key to what you want to do going forward. And I can guarantee you, if they're happy going forward, then there'll be fewer people at the Board of Adjustment meeting.
Your words are well taken, Chairman, and thank you for your time tonight and everybody's time tonight riding this one through with us. We are committed to the community, and today was a really good meeting with them, and it will continue. You have my word on that.
All right, then.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any comments, other comments from the commissioner? Any other comments from the public? Then, if there is no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Then we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks again for everything.